As parents, we want to provide the best for our kids. But what happens when our own past traumas interfere with our ability to do so? In this episode, we'll uncover those hidden ways abuse affects parenting and learn powerful strategies for healing and growth. Hey parents, welcome to Fulfillment Therapy. Do you want to raise your kids better and have a stronger marriage? Are you up late at night researching marriage and parenting tools and self-care tips? Do you start each day hoping for deeper connections and less chaos, but it ends with family arguments and going 12 different directions again? My name's Kendra, wife, mom, therapist, and growth enthusiast. It wasn't until I discovered how to fulfill my unmet needs that I was finally able to show up as my best self as a spouse and parent. I realized that by meeting my needs, I could more fully meet the needs of my family with more energy and less resentment. In this podcast, I teach parents skills like boundary setting, prioritizing personal needs, communication, and claiming ownership. Just like my clients, you'll be shocked by the improvement in your marriage, parenting, and personal life when you focus on fulfilling your important, unmet needs. Ready to prioritize yourself so you can quit mentally throat punching people? Then grab those earbuds and head outside, and let's walk and talk. Welcome back to Fulfillment Therapy. I'm your host, Kendra Nielsen, and today we're discussing a deeply personal and important topic, the lasting impact of abuse and the journey toward healing. We're going to talk about how abuse affects both kids and adults and learn how to recognize the signs and discuss ways to support survivors and ourselves in a path to recovery. I want to begin with a poem from the movie Antwone Fisher that I watched a long time ago. And if you haven't seen this, you should go and see it because it really touches anybody that's experienced some level of abuse. But I want to just start with a short section of it, and I'll finish with the rest at the end of this episode. But he said, "Who will cry for the little boy, lost and all alone? Who will cry for the little boy, abandoned without his own? Who will cry for the little boy? He cried himself to sleep. Who will cry for the little boy? He never had for keeps." So if you've seen this movie, you might remember when the main character emotionally shared this poem with his mentor and the actor Denzel Washington. And it just really captured this profound pain and loneliness that abuse survivors often carry with them. Just like Antwone in that movie, many of us feel lost or abandoned or struggling to find our place in the world when we've experienced some complicated grief or pain or loss at a childhood that didn't look like we imagined. We often don't have the words to express that, as I've seen with many of my clients. But in many ways, we're asking something similar. Who's going to cry for that little girl who silently experienced pain and paid such a high price for something she had no control over? And sadly, the answer is often that no one will because we suffered it silently. People didn't understand what it was that we experienced. And even if they did hear about it, they probably couldn't understand the impact it had on our lives. So I'm sure many of you know this already, but just in case you don't, abuse can take many forms that can be physical, emotional, sexual, or even neglect. And it's any behavior that causes harm or violates boundaries or exploits power. For kids, it's especially devastating because it prevents them from feeling safe and really disrupt their sense of self-worth. Often the worst part of it is those long-term effects that they don't even recognize happening, but they start to see it over time. For example, the emotional scars, like abuse often leads to depression or anxiety or PTSD. One of my clients shared that he felt like he was wearing a heavy backpack of shame everywhere he went, and I felt like that was a very apt description, as sad as that is. But it's true. The The weight of it is overwhelming, even if it happened years ago. Another big thing that happens, and the reason many clients finally come in, is because of the relationship challenges that it causes. Trust issues and fear of intimacy are very common side effects of abuse, unfortunately. Another client I had talked about how he built up walls so high that he couldn't even see over them himself. That really resonated with me because I absolutely did that. At first, I just immersed myself in friends and frivolous things as a younger child and teenager. And then later, I became overproductive and very focused, high performer. So I don't have to think about that restlessness within me that was caused by that abuse and that trauma that I'd experienced. For years, it was difficult for me to trust people. It's still difficult for me to trust people even after all of my healing. Like, I'm a little bit slower to open up my arms or my heart to strangers until I know that they're safe. I'm always so impressed with my husband because he talks to everybody at the gym. But for me, it's this slow build. Like, I'll offer a smile or things like that. But he is so quick to just open his arms and help people and build that relationship where I observe for a while until I go ahead and open my arms and do the same. Because of that past that my husband didn't experience in the same way, thank goodness. And I'm still learning how to let that go despite all of that healing. And you might be the same way. Now, maybe you're thinking about yourself as I'm talking about these things, but what if you're worried about your kids, wondering if they've been abused? I just want to talk about a few signs that it might have happened with kids and with adults. One thing might be unexplained injuries or fear of certain adults. Maybe it's a sudden change in behavior or school performance, or inappropriate sexual behavior or knowledge. I think that last one is the one that I see the most with some of my younger clients I used to have. I don't take them anymore because that is very difficult. It takes a special kind of person. But that is one of the first things that people notice because it's so out of character. And those other signs can be attributed to other things as well. So it often takes a professional to explore that to see if there's anything else going on. Now, in adults, like I mentioned earlier, it might be difficulty maintaining healthy relationships, especially romantically, or substance abuse or destructive behaviors, or even a chronic low self esteem or self blame. These are all indicative of abuse. Now, it might be something else, but it is definitely a warning sign that maybe something else has happened. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, that I've talked about before, he's a leading trauma expert. He said, the body keeps the score. If the trauma memory isn't processed, it continues to play out in the body. And there's a lot of science on this now, and we know that it causes health problems over time if it's not something that's addressed. Maybe you've seen this in other people. Maybe they have hidden scars that you don't know about that continue to affect them and their health beyond just emotional health, but even physical health because of some of those things. Now, what if it's not you, but you just know of somebody else that you love and care for that's experienced abuse? What is it that you can do? Are you feeling a little lost, not really sure how to help them? You can listen without judgment and just create this safe space for sharing. You don't have to fix anything. As a matter of fact, they don't really want you to usually. Just love them. Just listen. Show that you're empathizing. Believe and validate their experience and encourage them to get help. And please don't go to that toxic positivity where you just try to give them the silver lining and try to minimize in this well-intentioned way. That is not helpful. But just show them that you love them and you care for them. And yeah, that must have been hard. And you're grateful that they're opening up and they're sharing. And you think that they need more help beyond what you can give. And it's time for them to improve their life, move beyond this when they've been subject to the scars of this for so long, that there can be more ahead. And they're already showing that bravery and just taking that next step to improving their lives and improving their relationships. Obviously, you do that gently and carefully as best you can. Now, if you are a survivor, it's very important to acknowledge the abuse. My friends, it was not your fault. And this is so hard for us if we are at the beginning stages of healing. So simple. We've been telling ourselves over and over that it didn't really matter, that it didn't really affect us. We've minimized ourselves over and over again for years that it's hard to change that narrative. But remember, it is not your fault. And then please get professional help, especially trauma-informed therapy that can really help with that. That can be EMDR, that can be brain spotting, that can be hypnotherapy. There's a lot of different modalities out there that can help with that. But research that, look into that. Search AI, I don't care, for the best ways to get help. And then just choose what resonates with you and find a therapist that does that. The last tiny little thing I want to say for those survivors is be gentle with yourself during the healing process. Sometimes it takes longer than you anticipate, but you are leaning in and trying to improve. And as you share that with loved ones around you as you're ready, they'll be patient with you. And if they're not, then maybe it's not a relationship you want to invest in anyway. I love what Dr. Peter Levine said. He said, trauma is a fact of life. It does not, however, have to be a life sentence. So well said. For many of us, it really has been a life sentence, but doesn't have to continue to be a life sentence. I want to talk briefly about reclaiming your story. Just like him, many survivors find strength in reclaiming that narrative, and this might involve journaling or some other creative healing expression like art or dance. It doesn't have to be creative, it can just simply be writing or even audio journaling. It can be joining support groups. There's so many online. Just make sure it's a healthy one as much as possible. And if it doesn't feel like it is, back away, try again, try another one. And then it can also be advocating for others. That's a great way to reclaim your story, to help others to open up and to start to heal those wounds. Remember how I told you the first part of the poem? I want to say the second part of the poem here. Who will cry for the little boy, a good boy he tried to be? Who will cry for the little boy who cried himself to sleep? And this might not resonate as much if you haven't watched the movie. So again, I encourage you to go watch it. This part is just so meaningful, or even go to YouTube and see that part of him reading the poem. It just breaks my heart and it's so beautiful. But it just reminds us of the innocence and resilience of survivors. And just like this story of Antwone Fisher, this is actually based on a true story. Many people find strength that they never knew they had, and they become something so much stronger in the process of healing. I want to share a quick story, and not all of you might believe in near-death experiences, but I was watching something on this recently. It told a story about how she saw God after she died, and she was so angry with him because he allowed her ex to have an affair and mistreat her and her kids. And she was so upset, and she just asked him in this heartbroken way, like, why did you allow these things to happen? And he just said, oh, you misunderstand me. And then he showed her this future scene where she was watching her grandson's game and her son was sitting beside her. And her son turned to her and said, I'm going to be the dad that I never had. And she understood in that moment that God did not want all of those things to happen, and he didn't condone them. But he sees the big picture, and he understood that it would take her son experiencing these things to break that generational cycle of pain. And he did do that. She said that exact same scene played out in the future several years later, and he became the kind of dad for his son that he never had. He used it to fuel him to do greater things and to heal not only him, but generational pain moving forward, like rippling forward in beautiful ways. Now, some of you may not believe in God or near-death experiences or any of that, but I feel like there's still a lesson in that, whatever your beliefs are, that we don't have to let that abuse be a life sentence. We can allow it to be something that refines us and rubs off those rough edges, even though it was not our fault and it was not fair and it harmed us in so many ways. It doesn't have to continue harming us. And I personally know that is true. It took me a long time to get over some of the abuse that I've experienced, and there's still scars that I'm working through. And honestly, I don't know that I'll be completely healed until after this life, but I'm going to continue to try. And I know that you can too. Dr. Maya Angelou is a survivor herself, and she said, "You may encounter many defeats, but you must not be defeated. In fact, it may be necessary to encounter the defeats so you can know who you are, what you can rise from, how you can still come out of it." She has some amazing things that she's written. Really appreciate this quote. Like, we can come out of it. We can rise above it. My friends, abuse leaves lasting scars. It does, but healing is possible. When we start to recognize the signs of abuse, we can help others that might need our support and our help. And if this has happened to us or a loved one, get help or encourage that help so that they can recover, so that they can begin that healing journey instead of it being such a life sentence. Reclaiming your story and building that resilience are powerful tools that will help you heal along the way. Again, your past does not define your future. Antwone Fisher said, "You have the power to write your own story and fill it with hope and that strength and that fulfillment if you choose to." And Penny Wildebrot said, "You have the power to end that cycle yourself, or you can help someone else end it." Thank you for joining me today on Fulfillment Therapy. If you or someone you know is experiencing abuse, please reach out to a trusted professional. My friends, you are not alone, and there is hope, even when it feels like there is not. Until next time, this is Kendra Nielsen, reminding you that your journey to healing and fulfillment is worth every step. Don't forget to go to fulfillmenttherapy.org and sign up for our emails. We'll give you weekly tips on how to take your life to the next level and let you know what podcast episodes are coming out, as well as any discounts or anything else you might want. So check that out on our website under Contact Us or Learn More, and you can get those weekly emails. Thanks again, my friends, and we'll see you back here in just a few days. Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, chances are someone else would too. Would you take 30 seconds to share this with a friend who's looking for greater family fulfillment? And while you're sharing, tell me what you think about the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. It refuels me when I hear this podcast is helping you. No matter what your house or your hair looks like, I'll meet you back here every Monday and Thursday morning for more episodes. Until then.